culture broadly is where people's time and attention is spent, and you usually find capital or money flows are towards where people's time and attention is spent. 5 years ago, the fund took a view that podcasting would be a growth area because we could see it in the metrics that more people are spending time there. And as a result, advertising has gone up year on year there. So we're seeing kind of that shift happening. And our job is to figure out what's the next shift after this and what are people going to be spending their attention on over the next 5-10 years.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me on another podcast with the VC funds. Today, I'm delighted to be joined by Hugo Sunnucks, investment manager at Edge VC. Edge is one of the UK's most distinctive venture firms, backing founders operating at the intersection of technology, creativity, and culture. The fund invests at seed and Series A, supporting companies that are redefining how people create, learn, communicate, entertain, and work. Hugo brings a particularly unique perspective to venture capital. Before joining Edge, he was a founder himself, building and successfully exiting a low-carbon mobility startup. Since moving into investing, he has worked across venture capital and private equity, supported investments in more than 100 companies, and today sits on the boards of several fast-growing technology businesses, including Tenzo, Timlock, Mindset AI, and All Gravy. Hugo, welcome to the Sourcing Stack. It's a great pleasure to have you with us today.
Oh, thanks, Vinay.
Great. So let's start from your founder journey. From founder to an investor, you built and exited a company before moving into venture capital. How has being a founder changed the way you evaluate entrepreneurs compared to investors who have never built a business themselves?
Yeah, we're a rare breed on the investment side, at least in the UK. I think it's about 8% of people working in venture capital in the UK have had a startup themselves and just generally not even exited. But in the US, that's more like 40%. So it feels like there's not that many of us in the UK, but actually I think it's potentially a good thing because you want diversity in investment teams and people bringing different ideas and different ways of working. But I think being an entrepreneur, you can definitely obviously understand the entrepreneurial a lot better, having been there and done it yourself, and be much more empathetic and aware of the human side of things and the challenges of scaling a company. So I think you tend to find kind of entrepreneurs are a lot more straight to the point and honest with other entrepreneurs. So it's often a lot more efficient. And you're able to support them in other ways and get to the nub of issues kind of when they arise, having been a founder, because you tend to find they don't shy away from coming to you.
Mm-hmm. Right. So what's the percentage you said? It's about 80?
No, 8% in the UK.
8%?
Yeah. That's
compared to 40% in the US.
Yes, that's from a couple of years ago, but I don't think it's moved that much since then.
Okay, that's interesting. Now, coming to the Edge thesis, creative economy, Edge talks about backing companies driving the future of creative economy. What does creative economy actually mean? And why do you believe it represents such a compelling investment opportunity today?
So the creative economy touches on quite a few areas. The bits we're most interested in are the breakout areas within that. So the fund's historically done quite a bit in digital content, gaming, where a lot of the successes have come from, education, and creator tools as well. At the moment, I'm more focused on hospitality tech because I feel, bars, restaurants, cafes are going to be around in 5, 10, 15 years' time. But the technologies those businesses use is changing quite quickly. So I'm having a push on that investment theme, and different people in the investment team are following different themes, but we review it usually every 6 to 12 months as things evolve, and it usually adjusts slightly rather than kind of a massive shift towards anything new.
Right, interesting. Now, AI and human creativity, the narrative around AI often focuses on automation and efficiency. Do you think AI will primarily replace creative work, or will it unlock entirely new forms of creativity that weren't previously possible?
It's funny because when AI, I guess, kind of became more mainstream, everyone said the last thing it would impact is the creative sector, and of course it's been one of the first areas. So I think that it's kind of going in two directions, because you've got, the positive thing of AI is definitely as a creator you have more tools available, and the capability of what you can create is growing really quickly, and the cost and speed that you can do it. So it's kind of almost, it puts more emphasis on the creative side of things and spinning up new ideas. But on the flip side, AI, it hasn't, to date anyway, really respected the IP of creators. So I think we're going to see a bifurcation of companies that do respect the IP of creators and those that don't. And usually, if history is anything to go by, the ones that do respect IP will probably be the ones around in 10, 20 years, whereas the ones that don't might struggle.
Right, that's a very interesting perspective, because much of the AI debate tends to focus on productivity gains and automation. But very interesting. Investing at the intersection of technology and culture, looking across the Edge portfolio from esports to media to AI and immersive technologies, what role does culture play in creating venture scale companies, and why do many investors underestimate its importance?
Culture broadly is where people's time and attention is spent, and you usually find capital money flows are towards where people's time and attention is spent. So for example, 5 years ago, the fund took a view that podcasting would be a growth area, because we could see it in the metrics that more people were spending time there. And as a result, advertising's gone up year on year there. You've now got presidents vying to be on podcasting. And, this is a podcast that I don't think existed 5 years ago. So we're seeing kind of that shift happening. And our job is to figure out what's the next shift after this, and what are people going to be spending their attention on over the next 5, 10 years.
Right. That's a very powerful way to think about it. Technology platforms may come and go, but human attention remains one of the most valuable and scarce resources in the economy. Interesting. Moving on to the next question, like, what founders get wrong about AI? Every pitch deck today seems to have an AI slide. What are the most common misconceptions founders have when building AI native companies, and what separates the businesses creating real value from those chasing the trend?
Yes, so AI is definitely, the buzzword I think founders feel like they've got to have in their deck. When we break down AI, I quite like the CEO of NVIDIA's view of it, where there's 5 different levels of, to get AI, you need chips at the most basic level, energy, data centers, and LLMs. And then what sits on top of that is the AI applications. So big tech usually serve those 4 areas, but the AI applications for a VC fund like us is the more interesting place to play in. And usually, the next question is kind of what creates the moats around the AI applications. And what we really like is where companies or entrepreneurs are focused on a particular niche that couldn't have been served before AI, because suddenly you can tap into previously untapped markets with that, where you've got unique data. So it can't, if Claude or ChatGPT or one of the LLMs out there decided to try and, or you had a client who tried to recreate it on there, they wouldn't have access to that data. And just the basics of kind of embedding with your customer workflows and being a really sticky product that way. So that's kind of where we're seeing, I think, some of the best companies at the moment.
Oh, very interesting. Now, the next wave of UK innovation. UK has produced world-class companies across fintech and software. Which areas of the UK startup ecosystem do you think are still underappreciated and could produce the next generation of breakout companies?
Yeah, so I'd say the UK as a whole is still underrepresented, at least if you're comparing it to US venture capital or venture capital in China, which is quite exciting because we've got a lot of headroom to grow, at least over the next decade. The bit I can speak to that I know is underrepresented is the creative economy, where it's a huge part of the UK economy, and there's different definitions and sizes of it, but it's a really big part in terms of pound amount and soft power as well. But yet there's only a handful of funds focused on the creative economy and very few at venture stage. So that's a big part of our investment theme.
Interesting observation, because like you still think across sectors, UK is still underappreciated when compared to US and China, right?
Definitely. When you have a look at the pound amount being deployed anyway, and we've got lots of great schemes in the UK with EIS and VCT funds and bits like that, but still there's not enough capital flowing to startups, and it keeps on growing each year, which is great. But if we're going to be on a competitive stage with other places in the world, it needs to be a lot more and grow, which it is.
Right. Great. Now, future work and human capability. Many edge investments ultimately help people learn, create, communicate, and perform better. As AI becomes increasingly capable, which uniquely human skill do you think become more valuable rather than less valuable?
So I think with every cultural shift, there's always a counterculture. So there's been a huge cultural shift towards AI and people spending time on their computers. And there's a huge counterculture of people wanting to meet in person. It's a very basic human thing, wanting kind of authentic human connection. So for example, if you were to look for a job in the market today and went online, I imagine recruiters get an inundated amount of AI generated applications and cover letters and all of that. So it's gone towards the other way, where it relies on human connection in a lot of cases instead. So I think that the counterculture to what's been happening in the world is going to play, well, it is playing out and going to continue playing out over the next few years for sure.
That's a very interesting perspective. Great. Now let's move on to the final questions for today's podcast. Lessons from 100 investments, right? You've supported investments in more than 100 companies and worked closely with founders through both success and challenges. What patterns consistently show up among the founders who outperform expectations?
Yeah, so I'd love to say it's, one thing or a group of small things, but really it's very wide. And it's a cliche, but definitely kind of, ambition, vision, the drive, resilience are all key attributes we look for in founders. But often the part people don't talk about is the non-market factors as well that go on. And I think a lot of venture cases, that can be the biggest driver of value creation. So where there's a shift in law or something that's not to do with the company, but you tend to find the good entrepreneurs are the ones who are able to seek out what's happening and find those opportunities.
Great. Hugo, thank you for joining us on the Sourcing Stack. Today's conversation explored a fascinating intersection of technology, creativity, culture, and human potential. We discussed the founder mindset, the evolving role of AI in creative work, the importance of intellectual property and creative rights, the influence of culture on venture outcomes, and why some of the UK's most exciting opportunities may still be hiding in plain sight. Right. One theme that stood out throughout the discussion is that while technology continues to evolve at an extraordinary pace, the most enduring opportunities are often built around deeply human needs. How we create, learn, communicate, and connect with one another. Very interesting perspective. As AI reshapes industries and workflows, the companies that succeed won't simply be those with the best technology, but those that understand people, culture, and the behaviors that drive adoption at scale. Hugo, thank you for sharing your insights and experiences. And thank you everyone for listening. We will see you next time on the Sourcing Stack.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.